My parents abandoned me as a child because I wasn't as smart as twins, but when they tried to get back together a few years later, I introduced them to my new family, and that didn't go so well. So, a decade ago, when I was just 12, my folks decided to send me off to live with my Uncle Bill, my dad's older brother, out in the country. They didn't want to look after me anymore. They felt I was a burden and preferred to focus on raising my twin sister, who they believed was far more capable than me. I can't argue with that. She was indeed a lot smarter. Unfortunately, I just couldn't keep up with her. While I was mostly average, my family was filled with top-notch students. My parents were both doctors and had it in their heads that my sister and I would follow in their footsteps. But honestly, I was never drawn to science. My interests leaned more towards creative pursuits, which is what I truly wanted to spend my life doing. The pressure was intense, and I didn't fare well in school. My parents didn't even try to encourage me to study. Instead, they insulted me and constantly compared me to my twin sister. This attitude was something I got used to from a young age, but it only grew worse over time. It became incredibly hard for me to focus. By the time I hit 12 and started high school, I was doing so poorly that I dropped out of most of my classes. Even when I tried my best, I just couldn't keep up. My teachers were always complaining about me because they had no clue what my home life was like. They thought I was lazy and not trying hard enough to improve. People at school constantly compared me to my brilliant sister, who was excelling in everything. I cried myself to sleep almost every night as my parents showered my sister with love and reminded me of how much of a disappointment I was, telling me I needed to do better. One night, things hit rock bottom. At dinner, they insulted me again over my grades. I lost my temper and lashed out. In response, they put me under house arrest for 2 weeks. That's when I decided to run away, not knowing where to go. I only made it to a nearby park, where I sat alone, scared and in the dark. They found me around 5 o'clock in the morning, after calling the cops. When they brought me home, that was the day they decided to send me to live with Uncle Bill and his family in the village. When my parents broke the news, I begged them not to do it. I promised to improve and not disappoint them anymore, and I swore I wouldn't run away again. But they didn't care. They told me I'd let them down and they couldn't handle it anymore, especially with another child to take care of. They claimed they couldn't spend all their time taking care of someone who had proven useless over and over again. Honestly, I don't think that was true, VJ. They spent most of their time doting on my sister. They hardly cared about me unless it was to mock me for my poor school performance. I kept begging them not to send me away because I didn't want to be separated from them, and most importantly, I didn't want to be apart from my sister, the only person in the family who treated me kindly. But they wouldn't listen. They made me say goodbye to my sister and didn't even let her come with me on the trip to Uncle Bill's house. Once I got there, I cried for weeks. All I wanted was to go back home. I kept trying to call my parents, but they never answered. My uncle and aunt were incredibly supportive during this time, BG. They understood what I was going through. But my parents ignored my calls. After a few weeks, I decided to keep in touch with my sister secretly. She was the only one who talked to me, but she didn't have a cell phone, so I had to call her from my uncle's phone to our home phone when my parents were away. Thankfully, social media was just becoming popular then, so she used the computer to talk to me. She would tell me everything was okay, and we kept in touch that way. My sister and I are still close. She kept me informed about our parents over the last decade, and told me a few weeks ago that they were planning to contact me. This gave me some time to mentally prepare. For the first few years, my parents refused to talk to me after dropping me off at Uncle Bill's house. After a couple of years, I no longer felt the need to reach out to them. They had left me, and that was that. Honestly, living with my uncle and aunt turned out to be a blessing. They didn't put the same pressure on me that my parents did, and I started doing better in school. I was still an average student, but at least I didn't drop out of classes. My uncle and aunt encouraged me to participate in school plays and sports, activities my parents never allowed because they thought it would hurt my grades. I was finally living my life and was genuinely happy with them. Unlike my parents, who forbade me from talking to boys, my uncle and aunt let me socialize freely and bring friends home. This is how I met my husband, who has been by my side ever since. We met in high school and have been inseparable since then. We even attended the same college and graduated together. Last year, after graduation, we got married in a small, intimate ceremony. Last month, I gave birth to our son. We don't live with my uncle and aunt anymore, but my husband and I have a house a few streets away from them. We visit often, and they come over to see our son. I'm currently on maternity leave, so I have a few more weeks before I return to work. Over the years, my sister has been open with me. After she turned 18, she decided she didn't need to hide our relationship from our parents anymore. She was a bridesmaid at my wedding and is the godmother of my child. Last week, during a visit, she told me that our parents wanted to visit me. They didn't know I got married and had a baby because almost everyone stopped talking to them after they sent me away. My sister never felt it was necessary to update them about my life, even when they asked. But after 10 years, they finally felt some regret for what they did and planned to contact me. She told me so I could decide what I wanted to do. A few days after her visit, my parents reached out to me on social media, asking if they could visit. They didn't apologize or say anything else if DJ just asked if they could visit. I was a bit disappointed by their message because I had sincerely hoped they would at least apologize for how they treated me in the past. For a while, I was so angry that I considered not replying at all. But then, I had a better idea. I decided to invite them over and show them how well I'm doing without them. I gave them my address and invited them to dinner this weekend. I also invited my uncle, my aunt, my sister, and of course my husband and son, since the dinner was at my house. I didn't tell my uncle and aunt that my parents would be there, so everyone was surprised when they arrived last weekend. That was 3 days ago, and I still don't know if I did the right thing. It was pretty awkward when everyone got together, given that I hadn't seen my parents in 10 years and the rest of the family had cut them off because of how they treated me. My uncle and aunt were particularly upset because my parents had promised not only to support me financially while I lived with my uncle, but also to keep in touch so I wouldn't feel abandoned. They only kept half of that promise, sending money each month but making no effort to stay in contact. My uncle was angry that they had essentially abandoned me, but didn't mind taking care of me. He stood up for me and told the rest of the family what was happening, leading to a lot of animosity. My father continued to send money until I turned 18, but there was no contact after that. After the awkward greetings, we were supposed to have dinner together, but I decided to make a toast. I leaned into the situation, wanting my parents to feel guilty. I stood up and gave a speech about how wonderful the last 10 years had been compared to the first 12. I did this to honor my uncle and aunt who had done so much for me and made my success possible. I also thanked my husband for always being there for me. I didn't mention my parents in the speech because I had nothing to thank them for, and they noticed. They looked down and didn't say a word. When I finished, I turned to my parents and said I was ready to introduce them to my new family. They were shocked when I announced this. My mom burst into tears and ran out, causing more drama than anyone needed. After they left, we had a very quiet and awkward dinner. No one stayed for dessert, and I was glad because it was all so hard to handle. I don't like my parents, but I feel conflicted about what I did. I haven't had a chance to talk to my uncle and aunt yet, but my sister and husband think I went too far. They say I shouldn't have replied to my parents if I didn't want to talk to them, and that it was unnecessary to humiliate them like that. Inviting my parents to dinner just to make them feel bad was probably a mistake. Okay, the comments are still split on whether I should apologize to my parents, but everyone agrees that I should talk to my uncle and aunt. At the very least, so since the jury is still out on my parents, I decided to contact my uncle today. It's been a week since that family dinner, and we haven't talked much these past few days. We've all been really busy, and I think the awkwardness still lingers, so we've avoided each other to keep things from getting more uncomfortable. Today, I decided to address the situation by calling my uncle. Before he could say anything, I apologized for inviting my parents to dinner without informing him beforehand. He admitted that he was a bit shocked at first, but eventually got over it. He explained that he hadn't contacted me because he wasn't sure how I was feeling after that night since I was visibly upset. He agreed it was awkward, but assured me it was all in the past and didn't matter anymore. Next, I called my aunt and apologized to her as well. She reacted similarly to my uncle, understanding my regret. With both of them reassured, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I don't feel the need to apologize to my parents, though. After everything they put me through as a child, I don't think anyone would fault me for my actions at the dinner. They haven't apologized to me yet, so I don't see why I should apologize to them. I talked to my husband about it too. He initially thought I should apologize to my parents, but I explained that while my behavior at the dinner was inappropriate, the way they treated me in the past was also unacceptable. He seemed to understand my perspective and didn't push the issue further. I told my sister the same thing. She was skeptical at first, but then said it was ultimately my decision. Since I was the one who was hurt, whatever I decided would be fair. She hasn't been able to contact our parents this past week because they've been suspiciously quiet. I assume they're just laying low for a while, but they'll likely contact me again, either to demand an apology or stir up some drama. To clear things up, my sister isn't trying to be diplomatic by maintaining a good relationship with our parents. Even if she is, I'm okay with it. She understands how badly they treated me, but we were so young back then that our opinions didn't matter. She couldn't have done anything to protest. She did her best by keeping in touch with me, and that was enough. The reason she still keeps in touch with our parents is that they're getting older, and she doesn't want to abandon them, as that would make her feel guilty. There's nothing more to it than that. Please don't blame my sister for anything. It's totally unnecessary, and we share a lot of love, so any negative comments about her are unjustified. As for what happened next, I mentioned in my last post that I was pretty sure my parents wouldn't just sit back and accept what I did at the dinner. They're not the type to let things go, so I was prepared for some kind of retaliation from them. And today, it finally happened. 10 days after the dinner, my parents decided to go public with the incident. They posted everything about it on social media, which was quite odd since they're not usually active online. But for this incident, they made an exception. As I expected, their post was very one-sided, focusing on how hurt they were without mentioning anything about their past actions. I might have expected the post if it was directed at our family members, but none of my relatives like my parents because of what they did to me in the past. My parents were very clever though, VGJ. They tagged my coworkers and my husband's coworkers, even though he had nothing to do with this whole mess. My coworkers were shocked because they didn't know about my history with my parents or the strained relationship we have. Since I'm on maternity leave, I didn't see the post immediately. I don't check my social media often because I'm usually busy with my son. But when my coworkers started sending me messages asking me to check what happened online, I was stunned. I didn't know how to react because I never expected anything like this. I was pretty certain they found my colleagues' profiles because they were checking me out online. I have several photos with them that I tagged, so that's probably what they've been up to this past week, VEDJ stalking me, trying to figure out who my work friends are to tarnish my reputation. When I saw their post, it shocked me for a moment. Then, I decided to comment and set the record straight. I have nothing to hide. I was the victim in that situation. The incident during dinner was inappropriate, but not without reason. So I detailed the whole story, how they kicked me out years ago and never bothered to stay in touch. Even when they visited my house recently, there was no apology. If they had apologized, I might have reconsidered my response, but I believe I did nothing wrong. I explained this to my work friends mentioned in the post and apologized on behalf of my parents. They didn't deserve to be dragged into our family drama. I'm understandably upset. They could have confronted me directly instead of dragging my colleagues into it, which was unfair and unacceptable. I waited for my husband to come home. I didn't want to disturb him at work because he had an important client meeting. Otherwise, I might have reached out to him earlier, but honestly, it's just a minor drama, and I can handle it myself. I've already spoken with my sister. She thinks our parents are behaving irrationally now. Perhaps they couldn't tolerate the disrespect and lost their temper completely. Even so, nothing justifies that kind of behavior. I haven't told my uncle or aunt about it yet. I know they would react strongly, and I don't want to burden them now, especially since they're busy with work. Update. It's been a few hours since my last post. It's now 8 p.m., and everyone is at my house. DJ, my uncle, aunt, and sister. My husband is home from work too, and we're trying to figure out how to handle this situation. I'm reluctant to involve a lawyer, as some of you suggested. I don't have the time or energy to file legal paperwork and deal with this. I prefer to handle it personally and keep lawyers out of it for as long as possible. Of course, if they refuse to delete this post, I might need to consult a lawyer and consider filing a defamation lawsuit, or whatever action is appropriate. But for now, we're focused on persuading them to take it down. Many people have already messaged them, urging them to remove it, but they've ignored all our attempts to reach them. I'm not sure what they're thinking, ignoring our requests to take down my post. At least everyone who has seen this post will know the truth. It's unfortunate that it's gaining so much attention, it's not painting me in a good light. Not only have my tagged colleagues seen it, but some of my friends have too, and they're asking me about it. I'm not sure why it's appearing in their feeds. Maybe it's because I tagged them in the original post. Even after removing the tag, it's still showing up for people. I thought it might be a glitch in the app, but it's causing me a lot of trouble. People keep asking me about it, and I'm tired of explaining myself. They could just read my comment and leave it at that, but for some reason, they feel the need to ask me repeatedly. It's becoming quite annoying, and I just want it to stop. Honestly, I'm hoping I don't hear from HR about this. It could create issues for me at work, and I don't want my reputation tarnished because of my parents' actions. Right now, my family and I are still trying to find a way to convince them to remove the post, but they're not responding. Tomorrow, my sister plans to visit them in person to ask them to take it down. Hopefully, that approach will work. If they still refuse, we may have no choice but to involve a lawyer. Though I hope it doesn't come to that VDJ, it would be a lot of hassle for me. Right now, I just want to focus on spending time with my son during my maternity leave, not dealing with their unnecessary drama. Update. Hi, my sister visited our parents' house today for about an hour. I wasn't sure what was happening, but she just informed me that she had a lengthy discussion with them. She confirmed my suspicions, VJ. They found my colleagues' social media accounts by stalking me online, which is quite unsettling. However, that's the least of my concerns right now. She explained that she made it clear to them that they needed to take down the post. They expressed they would do so, but on the condition that I apologize to them. I immediately refused because I haven't done anything wrong, and I'm standing firm on that. Fortunately, my sister knew I wouldn't apologize, so she conveyed that to my parents. She made it clear that I wouldn't pretend to be sorry for something I didn't do, and they should remove the post to avoid further complications with legal action. The discussion lasted nearly an hour, and eventually, they agreed to take down the post and end the issue. However, they also informed my sister to tell me that they're cutting ties with me and removing me from their will. I'm not concerned about any of that. All I want is for their post to be taken down. They can keep their inheritance. It's not important to me. My husband and I are doing well in our careers, and we're confident about our future financial stability. Even if we don't become wealthy, I'm perfectly content. I don't rely on them financially, which is a relief. My sister informed me that she conveyed the same message to them, so they understand my stance on this. I'm grateful that my sister expressed the same sentiment to them. It ensures they know where I stand. Now that this matter is resolved, I plan to dedicate the rest of my maternity leave to spending time with my son and making the most of it before returning to work. Thank you all for the support you've shown me during this challenging time.